Welcome to the Golden Age of Cardboard podcast, where we remember a time when stacks of cards were held together with rubber bands and Mickey mantles were put in bike spokes. We hope you will enjoy and reminisce as you come along with us as we tell stories about the baseball cards from the Golden Age of Baseball. We will examine the state of the vintage baseball card market and talk to some of the greatest collectors in the hobby. You won't be hearing us talk about any chrome or shiny cards here. Now, to take you on this retrospective journey, here's your host, direct from the shallow end of the gene pool, my son, Mike Moynihan.
Yo, and hello everybody. Mike here, baseball collector. Even though you don't care that I'm a baseball collector on YouTube, this is Mike Moynihan. Welcome to another episode of the Golden Age of Cardboard podcast. I'm your host today and every day and every week. I hope you've been enjoying all the podcasts, all the vintage topics that are out there. There's so many things to cover, and tonight we're going to cover something that I'm super excited about, mainly because of the guests that I get to have, but it is about grading and grading with vintage. And so we'll get into that in just a second. But today, another sad day, really. We were recording this on a Tuesday, and today I learned that Don Sutton has passed away. When's it going to stop? I mean, I guess we're all getting older, and, you know, Father Time is undefeated. So we just continue to lose Hall of Famers, but it's incredibly sad, really. And, you know, Don Sutton, age 75, Hall of Fame pitcher, passed away. So he was definitely vintage, maybe a little too soon, but he definitely has a lot of cards in the vintage era. That's for sure. But that's, again, what we're going to talk about tonight is, again, a topic near and dear to my heart because I'm a graded guy. And I really believe that a collection is better when it's graded. And I know that's not a 100% truism in the hobby. A lot of people love draw cards, and there's nothing wrong with them. I have plenty of them. But I genuinely would say this: if I could, and money wasn't an object, every single card I own would be in a slab. And we're going to talk about why, and we'll get into that. But I want to bring my guest in because this is not a solo act tonight, although it has been the last few weeks. And I have none other than the cardboard oracle himself, Eric, ThoseBackPages. Hey, Eric, how are you?
Hello, friends. I'm good. How are you, Mike?
I'm good. You know, I don't feel right here. This doesn't feel equal. So I'm going to bring myself, because I know you can't bring yourself up to my level in terms of light. So let me see. How's that? That's more like it. Now we're even.
Nice.
We have about equal light levels, and it doesn't matter. This is a podcast. So the people that are listening are laughing, going, what the heck are they talking about? But, you know, we're going to just talk tonight in relatively low light. If you're watching on YouTube, just listen. That's Eric, right. Man, you are, well, you're one of my best friends, and I appreciate that. But you also have an amazing collection, and you have been a long-time advocate of graded cards. Why?
That's a great question. I just feel that, do you want the Cliff Note version, or do you want the long, extended run-on version? I mean,
this is your world. I'm just living in it, man. Okay. So I'd like the long version, honestly.
Well, I prefer graded cards because I treat them, maybe I look at them a little different than your average collector. I look at them as a vessel to get a card from, well, one of the things I look at is as a vessel to get the card from point A, the seller, to point B, the buyer, with an unbiased opinion on what the condition, within reason. Obviously, the events of the last few years, we all know that what's going on, and still, to me, it's the best way to get it from A to B. Because, in my opinion, someone who is selling their raw card, it is in their best interest to say, yeah, that's mint. Yeah, that's gem mint. Yeah, it's in great shape. Like new. One of the categories on eBay.
So it's a condition issue for you.
Well,
preservation of the condition.
Yes, the state of condition. Because in correlation to that is the asking price or the sales price. So the seller, it's in their best opinion to say it's the best, to overstate one's own merchandise, if that makes sense, because they want to get the most possible out of their transaction, which is that. So I see third-party grading as a way to mediate between the two. Plus, they look nice. They are they do provide a degree of protection. They are also a great way to show them to non-collectors. Like if you have a family member comes over, say, hey, you want to see my Mickey Mantle? And they say, sure. You hand them a Mickey Mantle slab. Oh, this is cool. Now, I don't know about you. I can only speak for myself. But if a family member comes over, hey, do you have any Mickey Mantle cards? Yeah, hold on. And you hand them a raw card, you're going to be a little nervous.
More than a little.
So, that's another aspect of it, for sure.
Yeah. Okay. How many, just off the top of your head, if you were to guess, graded cards between all sports, non-sports, how many graded cards do you have in your collection?
Probably around 3,500.
Yeah. I think I'm close to 3,000 now.
Nice.
Maybe closing in on 3,500. And I mean, that's a lot, right? And it means we like them. And for me, it's more of a protection for sure. I mean, you cannot deny a card in a slab is better protected, period, paragraph, right?
Right. Oh, is its raw counterpart? Yes.
Right. Compared to a raw counterpart. Yes. And it's more likely to remain in that condition for an indefinite period of time versus a raw can get handled and dinged and you name it.
Yeah.
Right. What I think you lose with a slab, though, is there is something about the feel of a vintage baseball card, right?
No doubt. And the smell.
And the smell. That's right. Which, if people don't know what I'm talking about or Eric's talking about, then grab some of your vintage cards and just take a whiff. They have an aroma about them that is unique, and it's indistinct. I mean, it's very distinctive. So those are all great things. And for me, when I first started collecting, especially in the vintage area, where I felt like, man, I am very knowledgeable about cards, and yet I don't feel confident that I can tell a very good fake / reprint from the real thing. There are some very, very good fakes out there, right?
Especially in the internet age.
Right. And so that scared me. And again, not that PSA or BGS or SGC are going to be perfect at that, but at least then there's someone else providing an opinion besides just me, right?
Right.
It's someone hopefully with significantly more experience than I do, but maybe not. They're hiring all these newbies off the street. But if, we'll get into that in a second, but the idea of getting the card authenticated, this is a real mantle, whatever your XYZ mantle, it's protected now and forever unless somebody breaks the slab. It is been given an assigned grade, which is probably, well, not probably, it is the most subjective part of grading, is that But to me, there's no better way to have a graded a vintage card than to, okay, at least I know what grade it is. I know it's protected, and I know it's real. To as best as possible, you know,
right,
as best as can be done. And let's talk about if you'll explain to everybody out there, there are the three, I'll call them the three majors, plus the new kid on the block that's coming up. Would you mind explaining to people, A, who those companies are, and B, at least traditionally speaking, what they specialize in terms of where people go to get cards graded?
Well, you've got PSA. They've been around the longest. Then you've got SGC. They've been around the second longest. Then the new kid on the block will be BGS. Well, they would be third. The new kid on the block technically is starting up this year. Is what are the three? It's CGC, but they
CGS or C. Oh, I can't remember either.
Yeah,
it's comic book grading. The comic book grading company,
right.
CGC.
It's the CGC company, but they've launched a baseball, a sports. They've been doing non-sports, but now they've launched a sports branch, but I cannot remember the three letters. CCB, or I can't remember, to be honest.
I'm blanking on it too.
Yeah. But so PSA being, you know, the old man on the block, again, this is an interesting topic because it depends on what, back when I started slabs in 2005, starting collecting slabs, was PSA was known for post-war right up until 1999 or so. And then BGS took over for the 2000s, when the whole, Bowman Chrome Autos, the Pujols blew up. And then BGS took foothold of the modern, I guess technically 90s are modern, but for the most part, it was post-war. Like SGC was pre-war, PSA was post-war up until about 2000, and then BGS was 2000 to current. And that held true up until probably 3 years ago now.
Yeah, I was going to say 3 years ago.
Yeah, 3 years ago now, PSA pretty much post-war is PSA, pre-war is still SGC, but BGS still has a foothold on the Bowman Chrome Auto, the Bowman Chrome Prospect Auto market. I'd still say they probably still have a foothold on that, but for the most part, they've faded away. I mean, especially in the modern section of like the what a lot of people call the BAS revolution, like base, they say BAS, like BASS, but for all those years, it was the three companies had their own niche, and of course SGC is spattered here and there. I mean, at this point they're probably a good third alternative for post-war stuff. We'll see how the new company does. I mean, I don't think it would be that difficult to surpass them as number 3. I mean, given all the issues that SGC has had now, correct me if I'm wrong, but I've recently heard just this week that they are no longer accepting submissions. They are so backlogged that they're not accepting any submissions now, which is an interesting thing.
It is. I hadn't heard that.
Yeah. I mean, considering they, not for nothing, they got a little cocky when the whole pandemic thing started up. Oh, we're still open. When BGS and PSA were both shut down, their big thing was, oh, we're still open. Oh, now look, I mean, those of us
who couldn't see that coming, right? I mean, I totally could have predicted that and told you that months and months ago.
That's what I was going to say. Those of us who've been doing this a long time, it's not any surprise.
Not even a little bit.
Nope.
And, PSA, and I really want to stick to the vintage stuff because that's hopefully what this audience is.
Yeah.
Mostly people that are...
You can pretty much forget about BVG, which is BGS 80 and earlier, they call BVG for Beckett Vintage Grading. So that even kind of shot themselves in the foot, because why are you naming your two set? You know, you've got BVG, BGS, you've got people confused, that type of thing.
Would you agree that same card, let's say a 65 mantle,
Okay,
in the same grade on a BVG would be the lowest price that you could get on the secondary market. SGC would be the second lowest price, and then PSA far and away the greatest price on a card like that. Agreed?
General statement, yes.
Assuming they're the same grade, and let's say it's the same card, like centering and eye appeal and all of that
was my follow-up, because but again, that's a major thing, the eye appeal.
Right.
I mean, because then you can even within the same company, PSA, if you have a 65 mantle PSA 5, that looks like your stereotypical 5, and then you have a PSA 3 that looks fantastic, they're going to go for the same price. That's not going to surprise me. I mean,
yeah, let's say you literally sent the same card to all three, like, not that that could happen, but if you did, and it was identical in every way,
right, then you go PSA far and away will be the top.
Yeah, just the label itself is going to dictate a lot of that price difference.
I agree with that, yes.
Whose name is on it, who graded it. And I think a lot of that has to do with consistency. I think just registry is huge in that, and the people that don't think so aren't in it.
Right, either they have their head in the sand or they're just in denial. I don't know.
Right, it is a big deal. And maybe it shouldn't be. Maybe the registry is way overblown. I could hear,
but at this point, I don't. They're not stopping it at this point.
No, it's the Titanic, and it's not going to get stopped. Because it's very. I mean, it's fun. I do it. I'm telling you, it's fun. I know you. Do you have registries?
I've got lots of them, but they're.
Yeah.
I haven't participated in a while, but they're still there. So.
Right. So you've got these competing companies out there, and they're all trying to get a slice of the graded pie. To me, my perspective on the hobby in general is over the last 2 to 3 years, grading has become multiples, 10x, 15, 20x what it used to be in terms of popularity. Do you think that it's to that scale in the last few years?
Yes. Two things stand out to me. On the super high end, obviously, that's a given. But I think now, I'm recording this on January 19th, 2021, I think that the mid-grade, even low to mid-grade, super eye appeal has taken it to another level. It's something that I've been a fan of for many, many years, and I've tried to preach that to people, to pound that into them, that you try to look less at the assigned grade. How does the card look? Anyone who's done this for any amount of time knows what I'm talking about. So I think I would say probably 4 or 5 years ago now, the thing that really took off was centered mantles, like low grade Mickey mantles that are centered. Very tough to buy affordable PSA 2s and 3s that are dead center, just because it's a tough thing, and now it's quite popular. So I think to a degree, I think that aspect of the collecting is still underappreciated. I don't want to say underpriced, because everything is full blown now, but underappreciated. And if you need an example, earlier this month, Bowman 53 Alex put out a video of his first pickup of 2021, and almost dead centered 54 tops Willie Mays. And it's a it's I'll spoiler alert. It's a PSA 2. He goes over it in the video why it's a PSA 2, and it's accurately graded. But when you just see it, it's like if you follow 54 tops, centering is always an issue with that. So, and he didn't say in the video how long it took him to find it, but it's not something you're going to just march on the eBay. Oh, look, there's a dead centered 54 maze in a 2. Let me just hit the buy it now. That's not the type of thing that either if you do see that, you're going to probably going to pay 5 price for it. So, I think that's important. And I think that's another aspect of, we haven't touched on it, but, if you want to go about grading stuff yourself and you've got cards that look amazing, but you're concerned about the assigned grade, I would be less concerned about the assigned grade just for that reason, especially with the upper echelon of player. I mean, the maze, the Aaron, the mantle, sticking the baseball, just the giants, not the team, but like
I knew
it. But you're not. I mean, I don't even if you have even a beater mantle, maybe you'd know better than I at this point. Maybe you can buy a 68 PSA 1 for like $75, maybe, but that's like the super low end. I think most PSA 1 mantles, unless they're like look like you put them through the wash a few times, you're looking at $100 car just for a 1, a beater, like a 69 beater and a 1 type of thing. So I think that's another aspect of anyone who's listening tonight that, I've got a bunch of raw cards, I'm thinking maybe I should get them graded, but, they're a little beat up. They're not going to grade very high. I would not worry about that aspect of it.
So let's take that a little step further. If there are people out there that are thinking about getting their vintage cards graded, do you consider the cost? Do you think, man, this is going to cost me X dollars a card because prices are going up to grade, right? Yeah. It's not getting cheaper.
Time and money and time as well. You're not going to get them back quickly. That's another thing. But the other aspect that we haven't touched on with the overall grading thing is like, what about family members? If something were to happen to us, the card's graded, you have more of an idea of what it is. That's another aspect. Well, and I know people that are buying that against grading, and that's fine. And they'll be like, oh, I've got binders and binders of great stuff. Well, that's fine. But if something were to happen to you and your significant other, spouse, children, whoever takes it to the local shop, they'll get pennies on the dollar for the most part. It's not always, but it's a strong possibility that they'll get taken advantage of.
Okay, I don't disagree with that at all. And I think about the simplicity of a slab too, no matter what company it is. If you have a 65 mantle, we'll just keep using that as an example. Sure. If I gave my son a 65 raw mantle and I said, hey, what year card is this? He wouldn't know anything about it.
Right.
If he took it to a card shop, the dealer could tell him whatever he wants and he'd go, okay, you're the expert,
Right. Exactly.
And it's worth $10. And if it's got a grade, a flip that says, hey, this is a 65 tops Mickey Mantle, card number 300 or whatever card number he if he is card number 300 in that set, I'd be impressed that I totally guessed that. But at least then what it is, what you've got, and you can. Most people are savvy enough to go, hey, Grandpa used to talk about his cards all the time, and these are graded. Maybe I should look on eBay. Hopefully, they would be at least that,
or internet
aware.
Internet search it.
Right. And then you go, okay, this grade and this 65 mantle goes for this. And you can get a much better idea than the raw card.
Right.
Because yeah, so that's a great point. You mentioned the time that it takes. That is rather annoying, right? We all would love to get our cards back super fast.
Of course.
When we send them in. And that's not happening no matter where you send it. It doesn't matter what company now.
No.
You're going to be waiting a while. But what I find interesting about, especially the vintage market, it's a relatively fixed market. They printed a lot of cards in the day, but a lot of them ended up in dumpsters and at the bottom of the East River. And, you know, there's the supply it's fixed, right? And
well,
more.
Yes and no, but yeah, I understand what you mean.
Right. Well, it's fixed. The population report's not fixed, but the amount of 65 authentic mantles that are out there is a fixed number, right?
Well, and yeah, but every once in a while there's more found.
Okay. But it's much less, you would agree, than 2018 Ronald Acuna rookie, right?
Right now, yes.
I'm just saying the total number, raw and graded, all of them together.
Might be
I think there's,
but I understand what you mean.
Okay. And to that end, vintage is just rare in and of itself, but rare doesn't mean valuable necessarily. That's not
right.
Those are not synonymous terms. And so I think of however many, whatever the population report, which a population report is just how many of them are graded. And then in each grade, they give you a breakdown. But you did a great video about pop reports and really understanding pop reports to the stance of a pop report is not accurate at all. Now, I say that, and I'm going to also say out of the other side of my mouth that it's at least a guide in how many are out there. But what happens is people get a 65 mantle graded. They aren't happy with the grade for any given reason, and they can crack it out. And that serial number that's assigned, that certificate number that's assigned to that card, doesn't ever get removed from the database. It is always
it's supposed to, but
it's supposed to, but nobody turns those in and says, hey, I took this one out, and you can remove it. And so then they might send it off to SGC or to BVG, and then it comes back and they're like, I don't like that either. I'm just going to send it back to PSA. You know, I mean, it can, that card could literally get graded by PSA several times, right?
Especially if it's a more expensive one.
Right. Because they might be, oh, this is really a 6 and they graded it a 4. Let me crack it and see if I can't get a better grader, you know, a guy that's in a better mood or whatever.
Right.
So the pop is fixed on the number of cards that are out there. That doesn't mean if there were 1,000 mantles of 60, I mean, just there are way more than that, but just using this as an example. If there were 1,000 and you had 1,050 grades in the population report, you'd be like, well, wait a second, this can't be true. And you would say it can be true because of that scenario of cracking and resubmitting.
Right.
That doesn't deter me necessarily. And I'm trying to think of kind of what the point of me telling you that was, or talking about that was, that you can, the rarity of the vintage, what's cool is, although the population reports are growing all the time as people send their raw cards in for grading, that's a good thing, I think, for the consumer, because it gives you more choices that are graded choices. And you can kind of find that beautifully centered, you know, nice registration, all the eye appeal things that we look for. Those have a more realistic chance of coming on the market, I guess, if people continue to send in raw cards.
Yeah.
Versus an Acuna rookie or some modern player rookie card where there are literally 10,000 of them graded. Right. So I think that rarity does create value, although it doesn't mean necessarily that it's going to be greater value. So to me, getting them graded increases the value of any card, most especially on vintage, more. And we're not talking about like your common, you know, Washington Senators players from 1964. I'm talking about Hall of Famers and stars, you know, Roger Maris's, the Thurman Munson's, and all the Hall of Famer kind of guys. Their cards will be worth more, and most likely, no matter what the grade, more than what you paid for it.
Yeah.
To get it graded, to get the grade done. Agreed?
Yeah, especially the upper echelon of players. Yeah.
Right. Again, it's not going to be true of a 68 Don Mossy, but, you know.
Unless it's a 10.
Unless it's a 10, that's right. And then all bets are off on all of that stuff, right? So.
Right.
What don't you like about grading, Eric? If look, we're talking about how much we love it and why we think it's a good thing and good for the vintage market.
You and I are both, you know, big time fans of grading. Well, what don't I like about grading? Can you be a little more specific, maybe? I mean, that's.
What do you think about the grading process / results / any of it that would discourage people from getting their cards graded?
I think the biggest deterrent is the turnaround time.
Okay.
Even more so than the cost, which is a lot more than it used to be. But the turnaround time is a major turnoff for a lot of people. Now, especially if one is doing this for monetary reasons. Either you're a dealer or you need to raise some money or whatever it is. But I mean, for the most part, you know, speaking to our general audience of more seasoned collectors collecting the vintage stuff, you've had them this long already. I don't think it's that big a deal to wait that much longer in the big picture. Now, what I don't like about, I guess this technically is a little different, but there is a heavy stereotype to grading. There's a lot of people that don't like grading. There's a lot of people there, and again, everyone has their own opinions on everything. That's what makes the world the world. But sometimes there's a negative connotation towards grading. You know, and again, like you mentioned earlier, they're humans. They make mistakes. They're not going to be perfect. Nobody is 100% of anything. So, as far as, you know, what we've coined Slavgate, again, there's going to be bad in any industry. That's the way life works. If people are ruled by the dollar, they're going to do whatever they have to for the dollar, which is unfortunate. But as a whole, I think it's done a lot better, a lot more good than harm. Especially like I mentioned earlier, that we live in the internet age, where, you know, anytime you can shop on eBay 24 hours a day, and it's a lot of people, especially, you know, the last year aside. I mean, even 5 years ago, people were shopping on eBay all the time. So, you know, I know for myself personally, there's no local card shop, you know, within an hour's drive of me, or probably even more than that. And there used to be a couple local shows, but they were nothing to write home about. Whereas back when I was a kid, you know, in the early 80s, shows every month. One local show. Well, no, there was one show that was every month, but then there was other shows there were a couple of shows that were weeknights. Like there would be a Wednesday night show at the VFW, you know, stuff like that. So, and obviously those were different times. But as, you know, with the internet and everything, I can't say enough good things about grading.
Yeah, I guess my biggest detractor is as a person who has sent in cards myself to get graded lots of vintage things like that, even autographs to get graded, you know, vintage players on, you know, autograph cards. I've almost always, almost universally been disappointed in the assigned grade versus the expected grade. And I could think how that would become a discouragement to people out there that are wanting to send in grades, and they're like, oh, this 65 Mantl's an 8 for sure, and it comes back a 3.
Right.
You know,
I see what you're saying.
And that can be, they went from an, you know, certain number of profit that they had in their brain. Oh man, this is going to be an 8. And I'm going to make this much money. Again, if you're reselling it, for me though, what's been the solace of that is these were all cards for my PC. I didn't really care what the assigned grade came back. I wanted it to be as high as possible, if that makes sense. But I didn't send them in to flip them. I wasn't sending them in to add value to a raw card. And so it didn't really matter to me, but it doesn't mean I wasn't disappointed. I still felt, man, I really thought this was a 7.
And
you know,
you think about that's what sellers that are selling their raw goods think.
Of course. Yes. They're thinking oh man, this is a 7 or an 8. Right? Yeah, totally. And so I think that could be a discouragement for people, because they will more often than not be disappointed in their grades if they're sending in.
Very fair.
And that's so true it's not necessarily true in the modern market, but it's really true in the vintage market.
Oh, it happens in the modern too.
True. But
unfortunately in the modern, where everyone expects every card that they open every pack, oh, that's gem. I just opened the pack, it's gem. Real life doesn't work that way.
No doubt. And in the vintage world, you just, I'm sure it's a 7, and it turns out not to be, can be kind of a punch in the gut, given the cost, the time, all these other factors that we're talking about.
All that rolled together.
You're like, well, this sucks. I'm just going to keep my cards raw. So again, I've sent into submissions, but you and I both, and I think I'm a huge advocate for this, because I don't have a ton of raw cards, and I'm not willing, as you said earlier, very eloquently, willing to roll the dice buying a raw card and hoping it comes in a grade that I would be happy with. You and I both just look at it and go, man, I'm just going to go buy the card in a grade that's reasonable, that's nice eye appeal and cost of that card. Right.
The work's already been done.
The work's already been done, and I don't have to do it. And I always look, when I look to buy a vintage card, and maybe I'd love to hear if you do this too, or how you view it. But if I'm looking for a card, I check VCP, which has become this amazing resource that has already saved me so much money, by the way, because I learn that's a little high for that card. It's sold for much cheaper recently. Little harder today because the prices literally fluctuate day to day.
Yeah, right.
And some more significant than others, but it's a great resource. By the way, if you use VCP, if you use the promo code BenchClear, if you sign up for a 1-year subscription, you get an extra 13th month for free. So vintagecardprices.com. Had to throw that plug in there, Eric. Sorry. They help keep the lights on, and you can obviously see that no one is paying the VCP subscription because the lights are not on. But come on, that was too easy. That was a easy layup, but I totally lost my point. Where was I going with that?
What you look for when you're buying vintage.
Yeah. So if I'm going to buy a 65 Mantle in whatever grade, I'm going to deduct the cost of shipping it. And I think, okay, I don't have to grade it. I don't have to ship it off somewhere. I don't have to wait 6 months or whatever it is. And that makes it, I'm willing to pay more for that card.
Right.
Because I've got a baked in, I don't want to call it profit, but baked in cost already that I don't have to pay. And I look at that as savings, if that makes any sense.
That does make sense. I can't say I've ever done that, but it does make sense. obviously the first thing I look at is how's the card look. That's always
Sure.
number one, because
Think about it.
not all the sign grades or the numeric sign grade might be the same, but I mean, anyone who's collected a while, you know, pinholes, paper loss on the back, you know, these are collectors' best friends.
For sure. Because you can get a great looking card at a severely discounted price because of the assigned numeric grade.
Right, because you know how the grading scale, you use that to your advantage.
And it's so funny how a lot of those flaws, whether it be a slight surface crease on the back or a this or a that, how little they detract from the beauty of the card. And yet technically PSA is grading it correctly, right? But
right. I mean,
there's so many flaws.
Right. You can have a spider web crease on the back, and the max your card can get is a 5. Like, you're starting at a 5. So then the other issues, if the card has other issues, the grade goes down from there. I mean, it's just you know, like I said, pinholes, paper loss on the back. I mean, there's just staining. There's just so many things that you can use as a collector that you can use to your advantage to save money and get great looking cards. You know.
And is there some truth to this thought? Because I believe this, and I'm just wondering if I'm just out of my mind or if this is a reasonable way to look at it. And that's when I look at a card that's a 3, 4, 5 type grade, and it's got some worn edges and maybe got a little crease in a corner that's not distracting from the main body. I look at that as that's a 80-year-old, 70-year-old card, 60, and it should be a little bit, you know,
right.
And maybe that's me rationalizing on why I buy these cards.
It's got character.
But it's got character, and shouldn't it? It's that old. It shouldn't look perfect.
You have to do, I mean, obviously with the higher end stuff, you have to do your due diligence and study up. I mean, very, you know, 8s, 9s, 10s of the vintage stuff, especially the stars, the you know, the more popular players, I would be a little weary. I mean, but then again, you know, like what was that Lucky 7 find with the Ty Cobb backs, that, you know,
the Black Swamp find.
I mean, there was a bag in someone's attic. It was in a brown paper bag in someone's attic when it was released, and it just sat there. So, I mean, obviously not every perfect looking card is, oh, well, that's trimmed, that's stopped there. I mean, obviously, don't go to extremes one way or the other. But, I mean, kids used to use their cards as bookmarks, so it wound up in the middle of a book. So, I mean, it is possible, but I understand what you're saying. Like I said, the cards have some character to them.
Yeah.
A lot of people like to say they can tell a story. Like, if this card could talk.
Wouldn't that be cool, by the way? Yeah. So, you know, the goal tonight of this podcast was not to solve grading and vintage. And although we're grading fans, you and I, it doesn't mean that you can't enjoy your collection the way you want to enjoy your collection. I guess it was the point of tonight was to kind of just talk through it and talk about things to think about. And hopefully we did that a little bit. Eric, you got any final vintage and grading and thoughts you want to throw out there?
You know, like I had mentioned earlier, I mean, if you're just starting the journey, the vintage collecting journey, in my opinion, it's safe to a couple of things. You buy some raw commons and study them so you can get a hold of what the issue looks like if you want to buy raw on your own. But if you don't, if you're more comfortable, like myself, buying already graded, use the assigned grade scale to your advantage. Try to learn the nuances, paper loss, pinhole, stuff like that. But try to pick, I'm a centering guy, which, you know, that's not news anymore. Used to be not, it's a lot more popular now than it was 10 years ago. But, and find that card that you want to own, but be patient. You know, I'm not a fan of upgrading later. Like, get the one you want to get right away. You know, find the one. Like, I keep going back to Alex's video about the 54. I'm jealous of his 54 Topps Maze in a 2 because it looks like a 6. That's the way, you know, as collectors, that's the way you win. You get a card and you show it to your buddies and oh crap, why is that? That's a 2? That looks awesome, type of thing. So do your due diligence, study up, always learning, as I like to tell people. And you got to enjoy yourself and enjoy the hobby.
You know, the story that comes as you were talking about that rings true to me in terms of when you and I in 2018 were hunting for my Aaron rookie, and we went by table after table and looked at example after example, and we must have looked at a couple of dozen at least Aaron rookies, all graded anywhere from 2 to 4. That was kind of the price range I could afford at the time. Do you remember?
I do, yeah.
And we settled on a 3, which I thought was a beautiful looking 3.
Oh yeah.
You know, and so they can be found, and that's the encouragement. If you're, I think you're saying perfect, you know, wonderful advice in terms of being patient. The marathon, not a sprint mentality. The don't settle doesn't mean you can't have a budget. I'm not saying you shouldn't have a budget. You should, but within that budget, I think you would be surprised if you're patient and, well, everything's going up. You know, today's high prices or tomorrow's discounts. I'm not saying that's not going to happen to you, but I'm also saying you'll be much happier with the right card that you find appealing, whatever your thing is. Eric, for Eric, it's centering, and for other people, it's registration or colors, or which is kind of me. Like, I can deal with off center as long as the picture looks nice and the, you know, the registration's really nice. So each of us have our thing. Get the card you really want. Be willing to, and you may have to just save longer. If you have a budget and it's a monthly budget, well, you may have to wait a little bit longer to get that card that you want, because you'll be much happier in the long term having that. The upgrade, you know, dilemma is real that you just said, Eric. It's not a good road to go down and hamster wheel to be running around on, don't you think?
I agree. I mean, you want to use that funds for another needed card.
Right. Oh, I'll just sell this one and buy the other one and make up the difference. You may not find the other one, you know?
Well, that's true.
So anyway, I really hope you guys enjoyed this. Just me and Eric talking cards and talking vintage and talking grading. And if you have, I mean, I'd love to have Eric on to, if, you know, at some point in the future, to do a follow-up episode on what you guys would love to hear us talk about this topic. We covered literally the tip of the iceberg in terms of ways we could go with this. It's meant to spark thoughts in your mind, thoughts about, well, what about this? What about that? Ask, especially if you're watching this on YouTube, ask in the comments below. If you need to, you can reach out to me on Instagram. I'm Baseball Collector Mike on Instagram. Reach out to me there if you're listening to this on the podcast. I'd love to hear from you and hear what you think about this episode. Eric particularly doesn't like feedback. He doesn't care, but I certainly do. I'm joking. He does too. We both want to hear what you guys think.
You can find me most everywhere at ThoseBackPages.
Yeah, so Eric is everywhere. YouTube, Blowout Forums, Twitter, Instagram too?
Yeah, I need to get better at Instagram.
Yeah.
But same username.
Do you have like Snapgram and InstaChat and all those, you know? I always do that for kids and they think I'm stupid. Like that, yeah, they think I'm an old man, which I am. But so that's it, guys. Thanks, Eric, for being on, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. That was a blast.
It's so easy to talk about.
one thing I'm going to close with.
Yeah.
buy yourself a Hank Aaron rookie. There's no wrong time to buy a Hank Aaron rookie.
Amen to that. I agree. And rest in peace, Mr. Don Sutton, and condolences to your family. Again, thanks everybody. We will talk to you soon. And as always, no matter whether it's raw or graded, keep collecting.